位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。根據加拿大統計局嘅數據顯示，本國嘅罪案率近年有上升嘅情況。至於同槍械有關嘅暴力案件，喺2014年至到2020年亦都有上升嘅趨勢。聯邦政府喺今年嘅5月底嘅時候，就推出近40年嚟最嚴厲嘅槍械管制政策 C21法案，目的咧係為咗打擊近年嚟嘅槍械暴力案件。而總理杜魯多亦都分別喺8月以及10月宣布禁止進口槍械，以及嚴禁喺全國範圍內進行手槍買賣以及轉讓，作為法案嘅其中一環。但係政策出台之後，各界反應不一。有人認為政策全面，亦都有人質疑政策嘅可行性。究竟凍結手槍係咪真係能夠解決以及減低槍械暴力呢？
Freeze on handguns, that means it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer handguns anywhere in this country as of today. So it would surprise me greatly.
呢項被認為係近幾十年嚟最嚴厲嘅措施，打擊槍械暴力。咁措施又係咪獲得民眾支持？
I was elated when the Prime Minister decided to take this move and to ban the sales or transfer of all handguns. And this gave me an opportunity to say, this is one of the aspects that I was fighting for the justice of my son.
The idea of banning handguns from people who are licensed to own them is absurd. And again, it's just a divisive, pointless measure, I guess.
喺2007年10月19號嘅呢一日，卑斯省蘇黎世一棟柏文發生幫派連環槍擊案，造成6人死亡。死者當中包括 Eileen Mohan 嘅仔，當時22歲嘅 Christopher Mohan。Eileen 表示，當日佢個仔正準備外出同朋友打籃球，突然喺外面走廊聽到槍聲，於是走出外面了解並目擊幫派衝突，但被兇手發現並向佢開槍，最後死於兇手槍下。Eileen 表示，作為母親，現今仍然未能走出喪子之痛。
My journey this far has been one of huge loss, emotions, and just a battle to get justice and to understand how the justice system works. And it has been a journey. Some of them have been victorious, some of them have been disappointed because the people who killed my only son and took his innocent life cut a sweetheart deal with the Crown, and several of them had minimum sentences. And that was a huge letdown for me, because once an innocent life is taken, it never comes back. And so I couldn't understand how the justice system worked and why this was happening. So I had to educate myself very quickly and understand what is happening.
Eileen 形容佢個仔係一名負責任、尊重別人嘅男子，至今仍然未能接受佢係以呢一種方式嘅離去。
You know, every day is a challenge to live in an empty house. And from a mother's point of view, you never get over the death of your own son. And Christopher was such a beautiful boy. He was a beautiful son, very well-mannered, very respectable, caring, and he didn't have to die the way he died. And we didn't have to lose him the way we did. And he had a right to live in our world, in our country. And these gangsters took that right away from him, just because he became a witness to their crimes. But my journey is an everyday challenge. And there's never overcoming losing your very own child.
喺 Christopher 死亡之後 ，Eileen 多年嚟一直為佢個仔尋求公義，包括向本國前後兩任總理發出協助請求，過程中有得亦有失。佢亦都表示，雖然時間唔能夠返轉頭，但至少亦都為其他類似遭遇嘅家庭爭取權益。
And so at that time, our Prime Minister was Stephen Harper. And under his guidance, the RCMP got a $50 million budget boost to combat the crimes of the 21st century. And that was the first big win I had in my son's memory. And then the second big win we had was we overhauled the victim amendments so that when I went into court and I had to take days off to attend trials and so on, there was nothing there to compensate for my days, or if I had to take time off for emotional constraints. There was nothing in the court system that would allow me to be paid and still come to trial. And so under Stephen Harper's government, we did the Victim Impact Amendment under the Constitution. So today, even though I didn't benefit, the families that are in court today will benefit, because then they can get paid for time off to attend trials. They can get paid for sick leave, for emotional sick leave. And so that was the second huge big win for me, was that we were able to get together with the government and do all these amendments so that the victims of the future, families of the future, will benefit, even though I didn't benefit from it, because we couldn't go back to get me any resolutions. But I was happy because under his memory, we were able to do all these things.
槍擊案發生距離至今已經超過15年，直到喺今年10月21日，Eileen 認為佢多年嚟所爭取嘅有進一步嘅成果。
A lot of crimes have been committed by handguns. My son did not die from a registered gun. My son, these gangsters killed my son from illegal guns that were smuggled into our country. But if we have to move forward, Canada is a law-abiding country. We are not a third world country, right? We are a law-abiding country. So why do we need to sell handguns in our shops? I can understand rifles for hunting and game. I can understand that. But for small concealed handguns, why should we sell those? And I was very happy that the Prime Minister made a case of it, that looking at what's happening across the border, and most of the killings across the border is done by registered guns. So I was elated when the Prime Minister decided to take this move and to ban the sales or transfer of all handguns. And this gave me an opportunity to say, this is one of the aspects that I was fighting for the justice of my son.
根據加拿大統計局數據顯示，本國自2014年去到2020年，全國罪案率都有上升趨勢，其中涉及槍械暴力案件亦都轉趨嚴重。數據圖顯示，喺2014年涉及槍械暴力案件，每10萬人口就有大約20宗槍擊暴力案件，去到2020年，每10萬人口就有接近30宗槍擊暴力案件。當局認為有必要訂立法規凍結手槍交易，以減低罪案率。
I was honored to announce alongside the Prime Minister last week the launch of a national handgun freeze, which means that it is now illegal to buy, sell, transfer handguns anywhere in Canada. This is the first time we've ever taken a stride of this significance in the country. It's a historic initiative, and it will help to keep our communities safer. Prior to that, we saw handguns increasing on average 45 to 55,000 new registrations each year. So we want to reverse that trend. But it's part of a broader plan. It's built on introducing smart laws like Bill C-21, which will reinforce the national handgun freeze. It will target organized crime by raising maximum sentences against hardened gun traffickers. It will give police new authorities to disrupt organized criminal networks that are attempting to traffic guns illegally at the border. And it will ensure that we are introducing red flag laws to help reduce the occurrence of the presence of guns with domestic violence. So we need to pass Bill C-21 as quickly as possible.
本地奇諾亦都指聯邦政府有長遠計劃策略去減低槍械暴力。
Well, I want to be clear that we have a plan, and that plan is based on 3 pillars. First, smart, sensible laws like the National Handgun Freeze and Bill C-21 that takes on organized crime. Second, by adding resources to stop illegal trafficking at our borders. And third, making sure that we advance prevention strategies like the Building Safer Communities Fund. And that's where you get at the social determinants and the root causes, making sure that you can prevent gun crime from occurring in the first instance requires partnership with local community organizations who know the young people who are most at risk, who know where those risks manifest, who know where the guns and gangs try to make their way into the community. That is a key pillar to our overall strategy to reduce gun violence. The trouble with the conservatives is that they think that it's just about doing one thing. They think it's just about helping law enforcement, which we're doing. You got to do all 3. You need smart laws, you need to back up law enforcement to stop illegal smuggling at the border, and you need to advance the prevention strategy, which we're doing with the Building Safer Communities Fund.
禁止手槍買賣以及轉讓嘅政策，對於一啲受害者家屬嚟講，可以話當局嘅遲來的行動。而聯邦政府當局就認為，只有推出嚴厲嘅措施，先至能夠令民眾回復平靜嘅日子。但係有關嘅立法，又係咪真係能夠有效咁保障國民嘅安全呢？對於反對呢一項政策嘅人，佢哋又係持乜嘢立場呢？我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。凍結手槍買賣以及轉讓嘅政策出台之後，有人贊同，亦都有人反對。有民間組織就批評當局剝奪咗一啲真正需要以及合法使用槍械嘅民眾嘅權利。有聲音更加認為打擊罪案有其他嘅措施，質疑當局未有將根本問題解決。
聯邦政府推出呢一個措施之後，雖然獲得民眾支持，但有唔少民間團體亦都質疑政策可行性。加拿大槍械擁有權聯盟行政總裁 Roger Tucker 表示，加拿大自開國至今，加國國民都可以擁有手槍嘅權利。佢認為政策荒謬。
So the handgun ban that Justin Trudeau and Marco Mendicino have rolled out is a regulation, which is kind of a temporary measure until they can pass a bill in Canada called Bill C-21. And the idea of banning handguns from people who are licensed to own them is absurd. And again, it's just a divisive, pointless measure, I guess, under the guise of public safety to ban handguns. So the problem with that is handguns, Canadians have owned handguns for over 100 years in this country, and handguns have been registered with the government since 1934, coming up 100 years as well. And the reason why we don't support this measure is Justin Trudeau and his ministers are trying to convince Canadians that the reason there's firearm-related violence in our cities and our urban communities is because people can legally own handguns. Yet the police services, the larger ones in Canada, so we'll take Toronto, have said overwhelmingly 89% of the crime guns that they seize come from the United States. So they're not tackling violent crime like they should, and they're attacking law-abiding citizens and taking their firearms. It's just not right.
Rod Jitaka 強調，持有合法手槍嘅人士需要經過嚴格嘅背景審查，批核整個過程需時，因此唔相信會危害公共安全。佢批評政府忽略一啲以合法途徑使用手槍嘅團體，包括喺練靶場作訓練用途，亦都冇就立法諮詢其他持份者。
And I think it's an important question to answer. Why does anyone need a handgun? Because people ask that question rhetorically and then they don't get a good answer back. The reason is that people that own handguns go through a lot of rigorous testing and rigorous vetting to make sure that they can be trusted with handguns. So to get a handgun license, it takes about 6 months. Then you get a criminal background check every single day. The only place you can take that handgun is to an approved shooting range. But despite all of these things, Canadians do it by the hundreds of thousands. And the reason is they are sport shooters, they're recreational shooters. Some of them are collectors. Some people have inherited handguns. And people's entire lives are entwined in healthy Canadian gun culture, meaning that they are members of gun clubs. They build gun clubs. There are 1,400 gun clubs across the country. They go to competitions, they travel, they spend their disposable income on their sports. Their relationships with other people are with other gun people, right? So it's a very important and absolutely valid and sufficient culture in Canada. And it's not, for gun owners to be spoken about that way is ridiculous, because people that don't know anything about gun culture couldn't care less. They just think that our culture should be just swept away and our property should just be taken. And it's just a very, it's not a great way to look at other members of Canadian society.
事實上，聯邦政府推出呢一項政策，亦都為個別人士以及團體進行豁免權，包括任何獲准授權攜帶手槍嘅人士，以及喺國際奧林匹克以及國際柏奧比賽項目中嘅手槍射擊項目進行訓練、比賽以及教練。但對於政府係咪忽略某部分派別聲音，一直有研究犯罪學嘅西門菲沙大學榮休教授 Neil Boot 就認為，相信過去幾十年期間喺加拿大同槍械暴力有關嘅案件有加劇情況，相信今次政府嘅舉措起咗震懾作用。
Well, I think the government's interested now because there's a concern about violence, because we as a culture are concerned about violent crime and about, I can tell you that over the past 30 years, the percentage of homicides in Canada that have been committed with handguns as the weapon, that has increased from less than 10% to 20 to 30%. So that's a very legitimate concern about handguns. Now, at the same time, as I said earlier, we have to acknowledge that the bigger issues here are cultural. We need to look at how this kind of gang activity is encouraged, and why people get into gangs, and what kinds of steps we can take to reduce that interest in participation within gangs, and the violence, as we see, pretty much weekly, we see of a targeted shooting and the killing of somebody who's involved in organized criminal activity.
加拿大槍械管制聯盟主席 Wendy Cookier 同 Boyd 教授有住同一個立場，佢列舉唔少已註冊槍械犯案嘅案例，認為凍結手槍買賣以及轉讓有必要。
Many of the murders of police officers, many of the cases of domestic violence and suicide are with guns that were legally owned or stolen from legal owners. So, for instance, the shooting on Danforth in Toronto was with a handgun that had been stolen from a legal owner in Canada. It wasn't a gun that was smuggled in. The gun that was used in the Quebec City mosque shooting wasn't a smuggled gun. It was a legal gun owner using legal guns. And in our view, the risks associated with handguns, the risks associated with semi-automatic military style weapons outweigh the benefits or the legitimacy of their use. So we support a ban on the sale, import, and transfer of handguns.
政府今次實施凍結手槍買賣以及轉讓政策，亦都惹嚟唔少質疑可行性嘅聲音，包括數理罪案預防會行政總監 Karen Reid-Sidhu， 佢認為政策治標不治本。
First of all, I don't think going after legal gun owners is going to be impacting the crime that happens across Canada in any significant way. I do believe that we need to do more to ensure that illegal guns are not coming into Canada. When you look at there's two things here. There's enforcement and going after individuals who have illegal guns. And then there are people who are bringing guns into Canada through our borders and through our ports. So we have an obligation to ensure that we are protecting our borders. We have an obligation to ensure that we are making sure that people found with illegal guns and committing crimes are held accountable and are actually seeing jail time, serious jail time. You don't have to look far. Look at all the gang activity across Canada, not only in British Columbia, but across Canada, Ontario and Montreal, where we're seeing a number of gun-related incidences that are happening with illegal weapons.
佢表示，聯邦政府應該加強喺邊境執法，打擊槍械暴力應該着重喺刑罰方面。
They need to get tough on crime. We need to change our laws. So I know the minute that the Liberal government got in, they got rid of the tough on crime bill that was brought in with Stephen Harper, and it doesn't make any sense. You are seeing people victimized daily across our country, and nothing's happening to them. So we need to have, if anybody's found with an illegal gun, there should be a stiff sentence that goes along with that. If you're a criminal, if you're found with an illegal weapon and you commit a crime, you should be going to jail. There's no, you don't get released on bail. You don't get released on a promise to appear. If you're found with a serious weapon like that, there needs to be stiff consequences.
面對嚟自唔同嘅反對聲音，聯邦公共安全部長門迪奇諾亦都解釋立法嘅原意係防患於未然，做好預防措施應對任何非法槍械交易，以及喺邊境加強執法，以停止一切槍械暴力。
Well, the purpose of the national handgun freeze is to cap the handgun market in Canada. And that's why it's now illegal to buy, sell, or transfer handguns. And so therefore, by putting in place this policy, that means that the handgun market will not grow anymore in this country. And that's important because handguns are now the #1 type of gun used in homicides in Canada. And it isn't just about introducing new policies. You also have to support law enforcement, which our government is doing by adding over $312 million to the border to stop more illegal trafficking, by making sure that we partner with municipalities and provinces and territories through the Guns and Gangs Fund to take on organized crime. It also means, in addition to putting in place smart laws and more resources for law enforcement, that we have to advance a prevention strategy as well, which we are doing through the Building Safer Communities Fund. And the whole vision behind that initiative is to tap into the expertise of the community, the grassroots, who know where the risks are, and empower them to offer services and supports and safe spaces so that young people make the right choices, stay in school, get good training for their jobs and their careers. And that's how you can eradicate gun violence.
而對於痛失兒子嘅艾蓮表示，本國實施凍結手槍買賣以及轉讓，已經向其他國家展示家國對打擊槍械暴力嘅決心。政策亦都保障下一代嘅公共安全。
If you look around when the ban of our handguns came into effect, we were praised by so many first world countries, not the third world, like the United States, Australia, New Zealand. They all praised us to take this courageous step. And I have to say that they look at us with a lot more respect than they had previously.
好啦，今集嘅節目時間又差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。咁如果觀眾咧想上網重溫翻今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得翻㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。